Hi everyone. For the third time, thanks for being here. My name is Gordon Tattle and I'm a Civ 1T4 and I'm running to be your VP Finance for this year. Over the last 3 years, I've had some really great experiences at school. I've been involved with some pretty cool clubs. I've been to some great MSOC events. And I got to manage sets for a year. Like, where else are you going to manage a bar? And I thought back and I realized that all these events were a thing, and all these clubs are being funded by MSOC. And what MSOC does is really important for the student experience. And I decided that I wanted to give back. As some of you may know, over the past year I've been the SUDS finance manager. I've been running the bar. It's a big commitment, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of liability, and you have a pretty big budget. So I'm pretty confident that coming into this position as VP Finance that I'm qualified. My priority over the years, I want to give people the experience that I got coming here. I would like to allocate more money to clubs so they can give people more experiences. I'd like to give clubs the resources they need to help them build budgets, to help them expand their services. And thirdly, I'd like to make the process transparent. I'd like all the clubs to know why we gave them the amount of money that they gave. So the process is consistent, so year to year, a club knows what they can expect and what they deliver. So yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mozam Shaheen, and you might be wondering, who is this guy? Why should I vote for him for VP Finance? What's so big about him than my counterpart? You know what I mean? Why am I worth voting for? First of all, I would like to tell you guys that I have previous experience in financial situations. So I've worked as a crew trainer at McDonald's, so in that way I've dealt with a lot of cash flow. And I've dealt and managed a lot of cash, so I count cash and do a lot of stuff like that. Secondly, after that, I worked at Myron. All right, and what we did there is I would manage accounts, business accounts for their people. So I've managed over it was thousands of dollars I'd be managing every single time. And most of the times, everything would go correctly and it would go well. After that, I've been entrusted by the Cancer Society. So I was there managing their funds. All right, so what we do is that they would sell daffodils, right? And I was the one who was in charge of counting out the money, making sure everything was correct. And that's why I feel like since I've done this experience and I have all this experience, that I would be suitable for this position. Now you gotta be like, okay, so he's suitable. What can this guy do? What is this guy gonna change, right? That's the next question. What can I change? Yes, I know that in my position, I cannot change everything. Or if I promise something extremely big, I will not be able to change it. Yes, I know that. But what I'm trying to do, or what my main goal here, is to increase clubs spending, or funding actually, so that clubs that deserve it or require funding, they get it. Well, if there's a one-person club or something that's personal, I want to decrease funding for that. Therefore, we would cut the costs on useless fundings, but increase the cost on fundings that deserve money, or clubs that deserve money. Now, the next thing I would do is, so the next thing that I really want to do is, wow, I'm losing my train of thought. I think I've been talking too much today. So, I can't think a lot today because I've only had 5 hours sleep, so I'd like to apologize for that. And then, so the next thing I would like to do, I think I'm stuck here, is that, you know what? I think I'll do it. That's all. Thank you.
And the questions are following.
All right. Same thing as before. I'm going to go to submitted questions and answers for this speech. Starting with you for this question. So, first question is, with the imminent exit from USU, what kind of provisions are you planning to provide in the absence of their services?
So once we're out of UTSU, what kind of service am I trying to provide? Well, first of all, everyone is looking for health and dental. So we should all get health and dental, right? That would be like my main priority. working on health and dental. And after that, minor services that UTSC provides, yes, if it's in requirement for engineers, then we will do it. Other than that, if it's not needed, then we will not do that. Yes.
And Gordon.
In terms of what services I would like to provide if and when we break away from the UTSU, I would definitely recommend reading the document written by this year's MSOC, where they talk about all the services that MSOC provides. I believe my goal would be to reduce the overall cost of tuition, because once we have allocated all these services that the UTSU provides with the extra money we would get that they take from our students, I believe we would have $94,000 left over, and I think we should return that to the students. Once we've replicated all their services, and we would be able to increase the funding.
Orientation has a budget of $100,000, and bear with me, this is a word problem. And is entirely funded through the sale of frosh kits and sponsorship. While orientation is typically cash flow neutral by the end of the week, orientation spends a lot of money before they start selling frosh kits. What steps will you take before you approve any disbursements? And please elaborate on procedure, checks, and consultations that you think would be appropriate and important before signing your first checks.
I think that the first and most important thing that we should do is ask orientation to prepare a budget, so we can see what their expenditures is, and we can see when they're planning on spending what. We've also run orientation for many years, so we can look back and look at previous statements and see if the expenses are reasonable. And if they are reasonable or they're new and they would provide an increased benefit to the society, then that's the procedure I would follow. I would want to check, I would want to see their budget, compare it with previous years, and spend the money if it's worth it.
Okay, for orientation, what should we do and how can we do it and how would we know? So first thing is that we've been doing orientation for a long period of time now. And we would have an approximation of what goes on and how everything goes on. So first thing is we would tell the orientation team to prepare a checklist or how everything's done. Then I would look at that and see what is required and what is not required. Stuff that's useless, sure, we take that out. Other than that, most of the stuff we would have a general idea of what is required. And then so you go back and fix everything that's not required, and after that's done, you would approve it and it should be good to go.
Great. What do you think is the role of budget surpluses? That is, if the current budget has a surplus, what kind of projects should it be allocated towards? To illustrate your thoughts, assume a $10,000 surplus for this year, which came from additional sponsorship revenue, savings in orientation, and the lack of publishing a candidate this year.
So we have a surplus. What do you do with it? Okay? So in my perspective, is that we should return the money back to you guys. Right? Since you guys paid a lot of money, all right, and if you have extra money remaining, why not give it back to you guys? You guys deserve it. You guys work hard for it. Money's tight for us. So if you have extra money laying around, students are the first priority. They get it first.
I think at the end of the year, once we have this surplus, we've already covered all our accounts. It would be unfair. You could say that you could allocate this extra money, maybe to clubs, but that's not consistent. We might not have this surplus next year. We might not have it the year after that. So it's not something reliable. What I would do with this money is it should be allocated to special projects. One-off things that would improve the student experience, that would benefit from this money. With a proper proposal, I don't see why that's not a viable alternative.
Okay. So we're going to open up to audience, starting with Game of Thrones.
I have a question directed. Actually, I guess you guys could both answer it. But you mentioned that you would kill kind of unnecessary club funding and give it to necessary clubs. So I guess how would you go about doing that? Basically, how would you decide what clubs need money and why?
Well, clubs that are most active or have a lot of members, right? Those guys will be our first priority. So if we have a lot of people, yes, those guys deserve funding. But if it's a one-person club, like I said in my speech, like I don't think that's very necessary. In my point of view, if a one-person club is getting $50,000, it's a complete waste of our money. So instead, why not allocate that money or give that money to people that deserve it? And there's more people joining in the club.
Okay, that was just to most.
Well, if Gordon wants to answer, you can go ahead.
I think there are a few main things that we should look at before we decide where the money goes to the club. One, what the membership of the club is. If one club is small and another club is big and they're both performing similar functions, the big club should get more money than the smaller club because they have more people. The second is how much value they give to the students. For example, a design club like Blue Sky Solar or Formula SAE, they're giving the students a much bigger benefit. Like they're teaching them design skills, they're teaching them project management, self-learning. That is in my opinion, worth a lot more than maybe a social club. So they should get more money. And the third point is how much money do they need? So a social club would need less money if they're running one event than maybe a club like a music club that needs to buy instruments. So that would be more expenses, so obviously they need to have more money.
Okay, to Maurice.
Part of DB Finance's job is to oversee commercial operations. How would you interact with them, and if you want to interact with them, that's something you want to do, are there any improvements or refinements that you would like to see made to the cafeteria, stores, and sets?
Gordon.
For sites specifically, I think MSOC has traditionally used more of a hands-off approach. Basically, as sites manager, I would suggest that the managers run more and regular events. They go very well. But if like sites can run itself with responsible managers, I would just need to make sure that those managers are responsible and so the liability concerns aren't too much. With respect to the CAF, I would make sure they're paying their taxes, and if it's unfeasible, and if it's unfeasible for them to pay their taxes and continue to survive, even though they provide a valuable service to students, if they just can't make the cut, I would suggest replacing the CAF with some other restaurant, like some commercial third-party restaurant to come, or restaurant or fast food place to come in and just replace them. It would give the same service to students, food in the pit, but it wouldn't cost our students money. If the CAF can't succeed, then it has to go. My last point, the last commercial operations is stores. The one thing I've been thinking of for stores is during the year, besides Godiva Week, Frosh Week, and a few weeks after that, and jacket fittings, stores is not very busy during the week. So I would propose reducing hours during the week besides those main points, much like sites is open during Godiva Week and Frosh Week all the time, and otherwise they're working on reduced hours or reduced days in the week. That would be the model I would propose for stores.
Alright, so for stores, the first thing is that initially, I want to increase the amount of hours in stores. Because once you come first year, like in the beginning of the year, you see stores have a huge lineup, right? So if we increase the hours initially, right, it will be beneficial for the students. And that's what I want to do, be beneficial for the students. After that, like after the initial rush is gone in stores, we should decrease the hours because you can see that there's not a lot of people that do go to stores. But we should make the hours in a good amount. So it should be after 6 or something. Like the hours should be at a time when people don't have classes, when students don't have classes. Now for the cafeteria, the one thing that I really noticed was wrong is that they don't have a debit machine. Like, come on man, this is the 21st century, right? And most of us don't carry on cash. So first thing is to have a debit machine. And second thing is to have, like, we want more people in it, right? A lot of like students, they go to other places instead of the cafeteria. It's because we're not offering enough variety and we're not competing in like the outside scale with the university per se, right? The stores in the university are offering better services, better food, better everything, so we should have better variety down there. Now for Suds, exact same thing as my partner here, so I want to stay off it, right? It's better, let them do their stuff because they're doing a pretty decent job. So if they're doing a good job, then stay away from it.
Okay. Is that still what's the problem?
No, it's GD,
Tejas?
Okay, so I have two questions. The first one is in relation to special projects. There is an amount of money sitting in our budget that doesn't necessarily get spent all year, and like, it's quite a bit. It's like a big sum. What do you find to like I know special projects is for things that come up during the year, but like what initiative are you going to take to see that money is used instead of just sitting there like all year round? And my second question
That's
is,
the second one.
Oh, okay, sure.
I'll leave that on the list.
okay, thanks.
Starting with Moses.
So special projects, right? As you said, we have extra money laying around. So in my perspective, I would just leave that, just in case we have some sort of special project or some sort of emergency. In that scenario, yes, we need.
What initiative are you going to take to see that money gets used like for improve like student life, for example, or like you know what
So what initiative should I take to improve student life? Is that kind of or
using that money? Yeah.
using that money? So how should I use that money?
Yeah.
Okay, so in my perspective, I wouldn't use that money, right? Like I would stay away from it and be safe and have it as an emergency fund instead of saying, hey, you know what, student life, we need extra money. Here you go, a couple $1,000. That's not the way I would do that.
With respect to the special projects budget, first off, I would reduce it by a few $1,000s. Right now, I believe it's $19,000 in the ledger, and I think that when combined with a planned surplus at the end of the year, is sufficient for whatever projects come up during the year. I think it's hard to say that what I would spend special projects on, because it's for things that just come up that aren't allocated in the budget, that just need to be, like if something breaks and it's really important that it needs to be fixed, that's what special project is for. If someone realizes, hey, this is something great that we can add to the school, that would make it look better, and we have this plan, and this is what we can execute, that's what special projects is for. I think what I would do is ensure that there's a plan for replacement, or rather for the spending. Like, if someone comes to me with a proposal, I want to make sure that they have a plan, but I don't think that's something you can allocate right now. I think that's something that needs to come up during the year naturally.
I have my second question.
I cleared the bottom speakers. Yes, Thomas.
Okay, this one's directed for Gordon as Muslim, and I'm pretty sure this is your first year, right? So you probably don't really remember what stores was like 2 years ago. So Gordon, as you know, there was a stores remodel over the summer, which was a pretty high ticket item. And I was wondering how you felt about that kind of situation, whether it relates like either to stores, but overall, how would you feel about a really large expenditure to increase, say, the cafeteria, or say stores wants to improve itself even more? What's your opinion on that?
Depends what it is. I think the stores remodel, it helps part of the year. I'm not sure whether that's a big enough part of the year. I'd have to look at the numbers and see whether stores has done better this year than the year before in terms of gross revenue. But like it depends what it is. Like, you just have to use judgment and decide whether it's important to, like, should Suds have a new permanent bar? Like, that's you have to think about all the consequences and decide what the thing is. Should we open up a cap? It's on a case-by-case basis, again.
Or if you want to answer that, I guess, kind of like.
I think I'll avoid it.
Yeah. Oh shit. Here.
So, 90% of my job is to do very laborious little tasks like signing checks, approving budgets, reading emails, replying to emails, saying no, saying yes. Just like the small. Hey, the rest of the job actually involves having some authority and actually being able to make things happen, you know, working with the managers on their projects if they have a new project, or else you have to kind of like have a hands-off approach, or at least that's how I took it. What experience do you have in actually being able to commit yourself to actually doing things on a regular basis, i.e. coming into the office, and are you going to keep yourself organized so those things don't get in the way of your schoolwork, because they are time sensitive and time consuming?
I spend quite a few hours every week at SUDS, 8 hours every Friday, and I have still managed to keep up with my schoolwork, and we still haven't run out of beer yet, so I've kept on top of the orders. So I would say that during the week I definitely have time to spare to do the VP Finance job and keep up with my schoolwork.
Alright, so how can I do both things at once, at school and manage? So the thing is that when something hits you, alright, you will learn to manage it. And now, I have been managing time wisely from before, and I used to work full-time, not full-time actually, I think 30 hours a week and go to school. So if I could do it in the past, I think I have the capability of doing it in the future.
Isham.
So in the last 2 years, club funding has increased from about $25,000 to $40,000 for discretionary funding. And it's something that I feel every VP Finance candidate campaigns on. So I'm wondering why you think that there's still a need to increase club funding, and if you plan on doing that, where do you see yourself treading the path of needing some budget to increase that allocation?
I do not want to increase club funding. All right, I want to remain the same. I just want to allocate differently. I want to prioritize clubs that deserve it, and decrease the funding for clubs that don't deserve it. And as I mentioned before, how I would evaluate that. So, in my perspective, fundings will remain the same, because every single time you hear over the years, it's increase, 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 increase. I'd rather not increase and just remain constant.
I think the reason that everyone wants to increase clubs funding is because, like, a lot of people at school, maybe they're not directly involved with NSOC, maybe they're involved in CSAR, NSB, or some other organization. So I feel like almost, or a huge portion of the people at school are getting some benefit from clubs funding. So I think that's where the drive to increase clubs funding is coming from. Specific for me, where I think I could find the money is, I think, taking somewhere between like $3,000 and $5,000 from the special projects budget would be sufficient, especially combined with a budgeted surplus, in order to, which could cover special projects if need be, would be sufficient.
Back to Vegas.
Okay, so this year I was an ex officio director as one co-chair. Like ex officios get a lot of money, and they're not a direct project directorship. Like you don't have control of them. Like, how do you plan on allocating? Like what's your plan on allocating money to them? Because they do run these full services, like Blue and Gold is like a lot of work while you're at, right? But like, how do you plan on keeping an eye on them and like making sure like that they do the job they're supposed to do? Because you don't have control of who is in that position, because they run their own election audits, etc.
For this, I think the first and most important thing is make sure they have a budget, so they know where the money has to go. And regularly checking in with them to make sure that the money is going where it should go. I think this a little bit falls under the student life portfolio, making sure that clubs are actually performing. So I think the VP finance tool in that is making sure this budget, checking to make sure, using fair criteria, that budget is the right amount for them to perform their role effectively, and checking in with them during the year to see how their spending is comparing with the budget.
Okay, so for that scenario, the solution is to make sure they have a budget in the beginning. So before you even give them the money, you want to allocate it, right? You want to ask them, hey, how much money do you need? And make sure that before you allocate the money, that you have a budget or what they're planning to do, right? If they have an extreme surplus or something like that, then you should cut it down, right? And then how do you make sure they're spending their money wisely is to constantly have meetings with them, right? Like instead of just saying in the beginning of the year, hey, you have $20,000, have fun, like kind of thing, right? Instead, you should have it, you give it to them in sections, right? Instead of allocating the money initially, give it to them in sections and improve in sections. And secondly, is that you have like monthly meetings with them to make sure whatever their budget was set out, they at least meet their budget. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 91 clubs plus this year, or 88, can't remember. 50 of them apply for funding. We probably give funding to about maximum 40, just because there are some clubs that get 0 because their budgets are really bad. How much time do you think it would take you to evaluate all these clubs, sit down, look at their budget, see if they're worth it, re-meet with them over the year, or do whatever you think is appropriate towards the club funding process? How much time, if you could just give me a rundown of how you would estimate that time?
Okay, so what I would do is initially in the beginning of the year, well, before even the school starts, you want to run those numbers and make sure that they have their budget straight before the school starts. So in that way, at least I'll have time to maximize. Like for example, if it requires a month, I'll do it a month, you know what I mean? So I want to make sure that we have everything straight before school year starts. And once the school year hits, right, I want to make sure like at least, so if there's 40 clubs that got funding and about 50 demand for it, so you want to at least have a meeting with every club or 2 clubs a week kind of thing, right? So that way, like, you can reinforce your budget issues or anything like that. But initially, for budget sets and they agree to disagree, so if you're going, hey, you got money, you don't got money, I want us to do that before school year starts. You want to be proactive instead of being reactive. So that's how I would run that show.
So you asked for me to estimate the amount of time it would take. It depends. It depends on how many clubs apply. It depends on how good their budgets are. If everyone comes in with perfect budgets and you just need to meet with them once, sit down, and you're done, it's going to take a hell of a lot shorter than if they're sloppy. My plan would be to work on weekends during the summer and get it done at least a month before the school year starts, and then maybe check in with them halfway through the year to make sure they're still on track.
All right, you guys, if you have a question, you should ask. Starting with,
No questions.
apparently it's just great, so it has to be fancy. Toik, anything you want to add? No?
Toy questions.
All right, any last question from the audience? Pearl?
Just a quick question for Gordon. Are you going on PEY next year?
No.
Okay, sorry.
All right.
You guys, thanks.
I was going to ask 20 seconds for you to do it.